Welcome to today's broadcast of Beautiful Life. I'm Kathy Bichsel. We are happy again today, thrilled to have for our second day on the set with us, Dr. Angelina DaSilva, who is a counselor, educator, life coach, awesome speaker, amazing mom, and super amazing person. And we have her on the broadcast again today because we have just been so blessed by her insight into communication styles and how important communication is to keeping prosperous, healthy, strong, enduring relationships. So welcome again to the broadcast again today.
Thank you. I'm going to get a big head sitting here, though.
I'm an encourager. You have to understand.
You.
I'm a coach. I love seeing people prosper and in their calling and fulfill their destinies in life. Now, we want to jump right in on today's broadcast, talking about giving you the opportunity to talk more about temperament, the actual 5 now, I believe there is temperament styles, and how that fleshes out in terms of how we process communication with others.
So temperament is a word that dates back to Hippocrates, the philosophers of those days, and sometimes
which is fascinating.
It is. I mean, yes, and sometimes though people dismiss it because it is so antiquated in their minds. But if you go to a nursery and you have children, you've been there, a nursery and a hospital, and you're looking, and I've got 3, and I looked at my babies, and each one was different from birth. And temperament is inborn. It's not personality. Personality is the mask that we put on to almost hide our true selves, depending on the circumstances. Right. Temperament is the core of who we are, and sometimes we have to peel away layers. So that's a real quick, in a nutshell, overview of what temperament is, and there are 5 basic temperaments. 4 are the ones that Hippocrates talked about: melancholy, sanguine, phlegmatic, and choleric. And then the 5th one is a more recently identified temperament from doctors Richard and Phyllis Arno of National Christian Counselors Association down in Florida, and that's the supine. And this, again, not getting into too much detail, but the supine is a combination of 2 other temperaments. But so we've got the 5: the supine, the melancholy, the phlegmatic, the sanguine, and the choleric.
So give me a little snippet, very, even if you have to use your Eeyore, your Winnie the Pooh, which I think is great, but give me a little, a capsulized definition of each one.
Sure. So let's start with the melancholy, simply because I think that's the most misunderstood.
Okay.
The word melancholy, unfortunately, has that connotation of depression.
Depressed and
right? Dark, black. Right. Well, Hippocrates had originally identified the melancholy as the black temperament, the one that was brooding. I always think about that statue, the deep thinker, you know. My art skills are kind of off, but when I think about melancholy, I think about that rather than depression, because melancholies are categorized or classified more as thinkers, and sometimes thinking can cause depression. That's overthinking. Brains that just won't shut off. So you could have a melancholy who thinks on good things and is in good spirits.
Right.
A melancholy who's constantly thinking on the negative, the what ifs, the fears, because melancholies are oftentimes motivated by fear of failure.
They tend to be more anxious. I know the melancholies I know in my world.
Right.
They definitely
so
tend
deep
to be
thinking
more anxious.
Can definitely bring a person to a place of sadness, depression, fear, anxiety, stress. But they are also incredible leaders. They are incredible individuals who are compassionate, loyal, honest, genuine, reliable, trustworthy. So many wonderful traits, and that's the thing that I like to bring out in my office, is that temperaments have strengths and weaknesses. Hey, we got to understand what our weaknesses are, but let's hone in on our strengths.
Yeah.
So I like to talk about...
that's the melancholy.
That's the melancholy. So moving on to the choleric now, that's the one that we see as the driven, perseverant, take no prisoners kind of temperament that looks danger in the face and just goes with it. Fear of failure does not even come into play with the choleric, because the choleric says, "Oh, I failed. Let me just do it again a different way."
Wow.
So how does
Real
that?
gift.
It is. Well, it's wonderful because there's great strengths in that.
But there's also weakness.
The choleric could use people.
Right.
Could manipulate people, could hurt people because they are so focused on their goal that all the people that they hurt along the way
Right.
You know, unfortunately, those are just a means to the end. So if you've got those two temperaments side by side, you could see where there could be a breakdown of communication. You could perceive, the melancholy could perceive the choleric's drivenness as lack of emotion toward that person's feelings.
Right, or not sensitive.
Not sensitive,
Correct.
right. So moving on, then we've got the sanguine that is just the happy all the time, loves
gosh,
people,
yes.
people, you know.
I have a, we love the sanguine in our family because I have a niece that is a compulsive sanguine.
Okay.
Like she has to be talking to, it was interesting because the girls were all recently all in Chicago, this one niece that is highly sanguine. And my daughter came back, who is more of a melancholy phlegmatic, a little bit of sanguine, mostly a melancholy phlegmatic. And she came back and she said, oh my gosh, you know, she just, what I found out about her is that Mom, she'll talk to anybody. She talks, you know, because her temperament is not the same. She wouldn't just talk to a stranger, where my niece will talk to anything that I call it like talking to my son happens to be part, you know, have a little bit of sanguine. And I remember at 15 months, I'd have to stop the stroller so he could talk to the mannequins. And I was trying to communicate with him. They are not real. Those mannequins are not real.
He might need my
He'd go,
card.
Mommy, talk to her. And till this day, you know, he's the schmoozer a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. And the sanguine's mantra is there are no strangers, just people, just friends you haven't met yet.
Yes.
And,
Oh,
you know,
yes, because I'm part sanguine and that I love people. I know, that's it.
Right. But can you see how that temperament could completely exhaust a melancholy? So if you have a couple who's a sanguine and a melancholy, and the sanguine comes home from work and says, where are we going tonight? And the melancholy comes home from work and says, I need to decompress. If you don't communicate that effectively, it could break down that relationship.
So true.
It's so fascinating. And it's not about compatibility. I have so many people in my office, I know we have to get to the other two, but it's not about compatibility. So many people in my office would come in and say, well, am I compatible with my husband? You're almost looking for an out. You know?
Yeah,
I'm not compatible.
Right.
No, that's not what this is about. It's about learning each other's emotional needs.
Right, so we have the melancholy, the choleric, and the sanguine that we've done. When we come back, we are going to talk about the last two, the supine and the phlegmatic.
Yes.
So we'll be right back.
With the hundreds of ways to communicate in the modern world, it seems ironic that people are failing to adequately hear each other. Conflict, strife, and discouragement in relationships are the results of a fundamental breakdown of communication professionally and personally. In this book, based on biblical principles, Dr. DaSilva challenges you to listen before you speak, to speak with the other person's feelings in mind, and to respond rather than react. By using the communication ADD techniques, you will become a better spouse, a better parent, and a better worker simply because you've learned how to communicate on a higher level.
We want to continue our discussion now with Dr. Angel DaSilva as we're discussing the 5 different temperaments. We've already covered 3. Now, can you tell us the final 2?
Sure. So let's move to the supine. The supine is a newer temperament. It's always
I noticed
been there.
that.
Yeah,
in my day, there was only the 4. So I was interested in your book to see that there was a 5th, because actually when I had done my temperament testing, I had some of that in there.
Yes.
And I think at that time, I was like, what's that? It was like the undescribed thing in your reading or whatever.
So if you understand the word supine, which means flat, you lie supine on your back, it's characterized as the servant, the serving temperament. If you think about the Bible, it's Martha going off to the kitchen and doing what I guess she had a kitchen.
I could just see my producer today, when he heard the supine goes to the kitchen, probably knows how come I'm part supine. Because he just said to me, if I move to the East Coast, I know where to go for Thanksgiving.
There you go.
I'm very motherly, and I don't know if it's the Italian or just that I love to gourmet cook. So every time he's out, I'm here giving him, right, Anthony? I'm here giving him all his good food, making sure he's well fed the whole time he's here.
Why does the supine do that? Because that is an indirect way to get an emotional need met in the supine.
Oh,
The
that's
need for
interesting.
approval, the need for
Wow.
acceptance, the need for validation. So the supine does that through serving, oftentimes because it's rooted in insecurity. Now you've got other things in you, so you've got the choleric and you have
I got
sanguine,
some phlegmatic. Yeah, I'm like a Heinz 57. I'm like a temperament unto myself.
So if someone were just a pure supine
Right.
all through.
Yeah, but no, I could understand that though. I could, there's a great deal of satisfaction when I put all that effort into it.
Yes.
I don't want to like go deep psychoanalytical that I have some big, like, I'm so insecure, I need to cook for people so they
Right.
like me. But there's something about giving that joy to someone, and that I do have a sense
Right.
of feeling satisfaction that
Yes.
I made somebody
You
happy.
made somebody happy, exactly.
Yeah, that's what it really is.
And when that goes unmet, let's say we talked about the choleric before, the choleric is that driven, I'm going to use people if I have to, and the supine is serving the choleric, serving, wanting to do for that other person. And if that supine doesn't get recognition for that, which oftentimes the choleric won't do that, there could be a disconnect, and it could cause
Right.
hurt feelings on the supine's part, and the choleric doesn't see that because that person doesn't need the recognition quite as much.
Right,
So
right.
there's a huge importance in understanding your relationship's emotional needs.
Yes.
So that's the supine. The final temperament is phlegmatic, and this one is very interesting because it comes from the word phlegm, the body fluid.
Okay.
Phlegm. Yeah, I know. Tune out if you
don't
don't
want to be
like
that one.
Yeah, here we go. So I always describe it as, forgive me, a postnasal drip that just doesn't go away. It's very stubborn, very stubborn, but also very, believe it or not, very easygoing. So
That's my husband, yeah.
So on the one hand, there is the tendency towards stubbornness, but on the other hand, there's also that tendency toward not wanting to make waves. Let's just
very
be even
steady,
keeled.
stable.
Yes. And so it's a great thing to have in your temperament makeup because it's very observant, very easygoing, peace at all costs. Let's fix this. Why? Because they don't like conflict. So while it's a nice thing, a nice blend to have, it can also be a weakness because if you don't deal with conflict, you're still going to have a communication breakdown.
And isn't one of the real weaknesses in phlegmatics, or I don't want to say phlegmatics, like labeling that, because as you've discussed, that most of these temperaments are blends.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are the situations where you are a straight something,
Yes.
like all the way through. Like you were
Right.
just discussing someone with me in the break that is a triple choleric.
Yes.
That in every area they respond that way. But my understanding is that with a phlegmatic, that leaning, that passivity can be the weakness, where they tend to let others be responsible for things they should be responsible for. They could also be passive aggressive sometimes. Is that true?
That is actually truer in the supine. The
Oh,
supine
wow,
could be the
that's
passive
interesting.
aggressive because they use indirect behavior to get their needs met. So the supine will say something like this, and I think mothers are guilty of this too. So we'll say,
Oh, I think it's Jewish mothers
maybe,
that are probably really
or
supine.
it could be Italian mother. I don't know. Although Italian mothers might be choleric too. But they'll say something like, "That's okay. I'm good. You don't need to help me. I'm okay." So it's that indirect behavior, and sometimes it could turn into passive aggressiveness when there's revenge there. The supine masks anger. They call anger hurt feelings. Oh, you hurt my feelings, rather than saying, I'm mad. And if you don't identify the emotion you're dealing with, you cannot heal from it. So when I work with supines, oftentimes I have to help them identify anger. And I have such a funny story about that. I don't know if we have time or not in this segment, but do I? Do I have time to tell you this great story about the supine?
Well, how about we save that for our next one? But
So the phlegmatic, though, is more prone to maybe biting comebacks because of a lack of energy. If you think about the phlegm, it's slow. It needs to refuel emotionally and physically. Oftentimes I'll have people say to me, I'm never tired. I'm always on the go. What are you talking about, this energy thing? It's not just physical energy, it's emotional energy. If you drain emotionally and you are out preaching, it drains us. We've got to refuel. And phlegmatics, if they don't refuel, they will snap. They'll have
Oh, yeah, it's
sarcastic
true.
comebacks.
They definitely need that downtime, definitely. Well, it's just been a joy having Angel here with us. We're going to have her on the broadcast again tomorrow so that we can start to discuss what ADD really means, right, in the title of this book. But we want you to know that you can get this book at angeldasilva.com, angelinadasilva.com. We've had this discussion about the Angel and the Angelina. Those who know her well call her Angel, but her professional name and her true name is Angelina DaSilva. And that information is on her screen. So we will see you again tomorrow. Don't forget to tune into Beautiful Life.
'Tis the season of giving. Kathy Bichsel Ministries and Beautiful Life are on a mission. As we do every year, we want to make this holiday season special for the children of Joseph's House, our missions project in Kampala, Uganda. We want to give them a holiday feast of special foods and provide greatly needed new school uniforms and shoes. Would you please consider helping us make this their best Christmas yet? Please go to www.kathybichsel.com/Joseph's House. That's KATHYBICHSEL.com.
Well, we're back with Dr. Angel. So, Dr. Angel, when we were in the last segment, you were saying that you had a great supine story. So, tell us.
Yeah, so I've whet your appetites. You've waited for this. I was talking about how supines do internalize anger and they mask it as hurt feelings, being hurt, because they're so needy when it comes to attention and validation. They need to know that they're loved and liked. So I had a client once who scored as a supine, and I sat with her profile, and I was just sharing with her very lovingly that she does have the tendency toward internalizing anger and masking it as hurt feelings. And she kind of sat up a little bit. I hurt her feelings. She bristled a little bit, and I really do look at body language, I can tell. And I said, you don't like that. You don't agree with that. And she says, well, I don't feel like I get angry. I don't like angry. And I said, well, okay. I said, well, you're uncomfortable with anger, with talking about anger. She says, yes, I definitely don't get angry. I get upset. At times.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I looked at her and I smiled. I said, you get upset? And she says, yes, I do get upset, but not angry. I said, would you like me to call it upset? Is that what you're asking me to do?
She made a new word for angry.
So we could cross it out and put upset. I said, but that really does mean the same thing. So it was a great example, and I've told her time and time again, I use your story all the time, and she's come so far. But great example of how supines really don't want to identify anger, and I think that it is incredibly important to identify the emotions that we're wrestling with, and anger is not a bad emotion. It has such
God gets angry.
Yes.
I mean, and he's the one who built our emotional life and our souls.
I tell people anger can actually be incredibly powerful because it's a motivating tool to get you to make the changes you need.
Wow.
So once she got that, she was more comfortable. Now she comes in and says, I'm angry.
Oh, that's
She's
good for
very,
her. Good for
very
her.
comfortable with expressing her anger now. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
I hope it was worth the wait.
It is a good example of how it really plays out. So tell us, Angel, in your book, Communication ADD, her book is Communication ADD, A Biblical Perspective for Effective Communication. And at the close of today's broadcast, you'll be able to see on our screen how you can order Angel's book. You can order it on her website at angeldasilva.com.
Angelina DaSilva.
Angelina, I keep doing that.
That's okay.
But thank you. I preached last night, and I'm running on whatever's left over this morning. But if you could tell us why you named it Communication ADD, and we're going to talk about actually what that ADD is an acronym for.
Okay, thank you for asking, because I absolutely love the title of my book, and which is good, right? You should love what you do. It gets your attention. I love the title of my book, and maybe it stems from working with so many children when I was a teacher who had ADD, and that's what we generally think of when we think of that acronym ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder, and that's not what this stands for. And yet there's a double meaning there, because communication ADD could be a disorder. It could be that our attention is not focused on our partners, and it can mean have negative effects. But for me, the ADD stands for something different. It is the technique that I use, I help my clients use to build relationships, to build communication, rather than an ADD that's a negative connotation. So I love it because it gets people's attention, but really I like to focus on the positive. So my ADD is positive. It's an acronym for the 3 steps that help build communication and relationships.
And they are, from my good little beach reading, they are acknowledge, right? Acknowledge, I'm very bad. I know one of them is diffuse.
Yep.
One of them is diffuse. And then what is the?
Disarm.
Disarm, yes. I'm sorry I failed the ADD test myself. I must have had ADD when I was reading it.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Acknowledge, disarm, and diffuse.
Okay.
Exactly. So, yeah, and those 3, of course, the book goes into more detail about them, but those 3 put together will just open up the atmosphere for effective communication.
One of the things that I had highlighted in the book that I think was really interesting, and I actually had put my paper in there so that I wouldn't lose it, and I think I lost it. But it is the paragraph where you talked about how God when we accept Christ, that our spirits are what are born again, but the Lord wants us to be sanctified, spirit, soul, and the body, and that it's really the choices that we make are in our soul. So could you just briefly, in our closing minutes, on this day's broadcast, just very briefly.
Let's talk about the soul very briefly.
Let's talk about the soul. Well, in the sense that I think people just think that because they have been born again, because they have this new life in Christ, and it says old things are passed away, that we automatically think all those habits and everything are gone, and they're not.
Right.
You know?
Well, the Bible also says renew your mind.
Right.
And this is a daily process, renewal. My whole practice is built on balance, spirit, soul, and body. And part of what I do as a health and wellness coach, it's spirit, soul, and body. It's from that perspective of having to be in balance, all 3. Otherwise, if one is out of whack, then the other 2 are going to be affected. And I
appreciate that you mentioned that, and that's why I said even in our break before talking about the soul, because there's not somehow we think that Christians sometimes think we're going into too deep of a therapy type of approach when we talk about the soul, but in reality we are a tripart being.
That's it.
And our minds do have to be renewed. Well, we're so thankful that Angel was with us, and we're going to have her on tomorrow's broadcast as well, because I want her to give us a little bit more of an explanation of what these acknowledge, disarm, and diffuse, how it can actually work in your life. Talk a little bit about the story of her practice, how she's helped so many people through her counseling. And it's not really, in some way, it's a ministry, but it's a full-fledged. She has her own office. She's a doctor. I love that. She's Dr. Angel. So please don't forget to let us know here at Beautiful Life how the program is blessing your life. We have an email address, Kathy@beautifullifetv.com. Visit our website at kathybichsel.com to keep abreast of where I'm speaking, read our blogs, etc. We love you, and we pray that this broadcast is being an enormous blessing to your life. God bless you, and we'll see you again next time.
In this 3-part audio series, you will find scripture meditations for divine life, health, and wealth. As the scriptures are brought to life with the accompaniment of instrumental sounds, you will be encouraged by the power of God's spoken word. Meditations for divine life will set you free from that old life of sin, fear, addictions, and depression, releasing you into a life filled with righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit. Meditations for divine health gives you a daily dose of God's medicine and fills you in on all your benefits. Meditations for divine wealth edifies you to be like the patriarch Isaac, who, while meditating, looked up and saw his camels coming, which was God's provision. This set will elevate your faith to the forefront in calling these areas in your life as though they are. Visit kathybichsel.com to purchase your choice of either a CD or an MP3 download. That's KathyBichsel.com. KathyBichsel.com. We trust you enjoyed this episode of Beautiful Life and the teaching ministry of Kathy Bichsel. For more information about Kathy, her books, downloads, and CDs, please visit beautifullifetv.com. If you are interested in Kathy's teaching schedule, or perhaps you would like her to speak at a church or event near you, please email info@beautifullifetv.com. We would like to thank you for taking the time to join us, as we trust that God's blessing will continue to offer you His beautiful life. So long for now.